Welcome to Shakaama Live Show with your host, Shakaama. In keeping with Black History Month, we're presenting more Black history that's going on right now, actually, for the record. Please subscribe to the channel if this sort of thing interests you, or if you like my voice. Here we go. Top 10 reasons African American homeschooling has skyrocketed. Number 10, for middle and lower class African American families, almost 90% of the time, schools claim their sons, and to a lesser degree, their daughters, are a problem in school. Homeschooling seems to magically make all the problems disappear. So, just so everybody's on board, the school claims that the child is a problem. The parent then starts homeschooling, takes the child out of the public school, starts homeschooling the child, and all of a sudden, there is no problems whatsoever. Even children with brothers and sisters, so it's not the child. Number 9, in keeping with number 10, these trouble kids are medicated by the schools without parental consent or even knowledge. Sometimes the school does not have to get the okay from the parent, and so they do not contact the parent, and they will medicate the child without their permission or consent or even knowledge. Checking with the FDA, though, they have openly said no drugs are approved for minors to be consumed. It's right on their front page. Number 8, also in keeping with number 10, backed by research even, African American male children are punished 2 or even 3 times more often and longer than all other children. The research shows that the African American boys don't act up any more or any less than any other boys. Number 7, moving up the economic ladder, African American parents who ask the schools to push more education, not less education, for their children receive resistance. Again, we turn to the research, and it shows that white parents doing the same thing aren't nearly as resistant on this very topic. Number 6, moving on up the economic ladder to the 1%, African American parents notice that even though they're in a much better school than the lower and middle classes African American families, they also are getting the same exact resistance, treatment of their sons and daughters, and outright harassment. When they encounter a teacher who literally objects to their input, and they figure out quickly that they cannot get around that teacher, the wife quits her job and they opt to homeschool their kids. That exact scenario is repeated over and over and over and over when you get to the 1%. All of the interviews seem to be that the 1% finally figure out that the school isn't going to educate their child or doesn't want to treat their child any better, although they're in a much better place than most of Americans. And so the wife quits her job and they homeschool their children. Number 5, zero education on Black history. The extent of history or African Americans in the U.S. is limited to discussing the American colonial era. Extensive study is made about the Roman Empire, the Greeks, which 99% of Americans aren't even from ethnically. In fact, most Americans ethnically come from areas of Europe that was occupied by Romans. Number 4, public school education, in general, is less about education and more about indoctrination. African American families place a lot of pressure on their children to have a much, much better life than they have had. Education has always been considered the way for African Americans to get out of poverty, gain respect, and succeed. Research shows that 99% of the African American millionaires have a master's or PhD. Of course, these millionaires never appear on the news or on TV. Only the 1% that are entertainers or athletes make it to TV. It would stagger the nation, I guess, that the largest franchise of McDonald's is an African American owned conglomerate that owns thousands and thousands of McDonald's stores. Number 3, we recently had a State of the Union address by President Trump. In that speech, an African-American mother and her daughter were presented to the public. Their story: their state's governor had vetoed a bill that would have expanded school choice so that the daughter could go to a private or magnet school and get a much better education than she was receiving currently in the area that she was. This is one of the top reasons African-American families are turning to homeschooling. There have already been documentaries of mothers crying because their child didn't win the lottery of getting a school voucher to go to a better school. Standing in line all day long and then sitting in an auditorium and having the names read off. Seems kind of barbaric to me. Number 2, at a minimum, a parent would expect a school to be not only safe, but that the adults would protect your children. But public schools do not see it as a priority. If you take a look at how much is budgeted for public schooling from taxes, you'd expect each child to have his own tutor and bodyguard. But that is not how the education taxes are spent. And the number one reason African American homeschooling has skyrocketed is because African American parents have awoken to an era where there is open and obvious racism in public schools. One parent during interviews broke down and cried because she, being a mixed race woman who probably lived a very secluded life, could not believe that her very dark son was getting all sorts of racist attention. She herself, in promoting homeschooling African American support groups, received unwanted messages from non-African American people. And that is the top 10 reasons African American homeschooling has skyrocketed. Now, for all of you all who think it has to do with the current president, no, this has been skyrocketing since 2005. Let me say, from 2012 to 2017, it went up by 100%. Currently, there is about 300,000 families, African American families, that homeschool. And there is, in general, a surge of homeschooling across the nation. But in African Americans, it has skyrocketed. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like the video, and if you could support the channel. YouTube does not like these particular videos. I have no idea why. I thought homeschooling was boring and non-controversial as can be, but apparently YouTube doesn't see it that way. If you could donate $5 at paypal.me/Shakaama or cashapp.me/$Shakaama. I'll leave it in the comment section. Thank you all so much for watching. I do all of this for you all. Thank you.